And just continuing from the other side, that's why they set up the television communication between the Beaverovskies and the Crotons, because they wanted them to always be able to communicate in the future and to become part of a beloved community of Beaverovskies and Crotons where they would get along in the future and help each other. So that step is called reconciliation. So they had 6 steps to solve any problem that came about, and they used those 6 steps, and they tried to get other creatures around the galaxy to use it to solve problems in the future. But the very first important thing was the information gathering to find out what the problem really was about, because a lot of times you don't know what the problem's about until you ask the right questions, and you got to question your own assumptions about the problem, because you might be wrong about what is really going on or what's in the mind of the other people who might be attacking you. So that is a little addendum, a little extra to the story, and they use this manual, and they call it Darth and Joe's 6 Steps of Problem Solving. So that's a little extra mini story for you. The end. Once upon a time, Lord, this story takes place a little ways in the future of the last one, when Darth, Joe, Sam, and Laura were all Jedi warriors. Because it turns out that Sam and Laura followed in Darth and Joe's footsteps. So all of those people from the Vader family were, and Sam and Laura had just become Jedi warriors, and Darth and Joe were already Jedi warriors, and the whole Vader family was incredibly famous because they were, of course, the best Jedi warriors that the universe had ever known. And even Yoda was very impressed, and he gave them each a segment for 1/4 of his golden apple, which, of course, Jar Jar was interested in, but when he found out it wasn't actually made out of a real apple, he wasn't so interested anymore. It was the golden apple, and it was not a real apple. It looked like an apple that was golden colored, and when you put all 4 segments together, 2 things happened. One, you could be in direct communication with Yoda. Yoda would actually, a hologram of Yoda would appear, and you could speak to Yoda. And 2, it could help to recharge. It had proton power. It's a sort of a seismic electrical power flux unit. And what that meant was, if you had some sort of spaceship or defense weapon or a blasting machine or a nostril picker or any kind of machine that took fuel and it was out of fuel and you were stranded somewhere, the golden apple could provide the power for it, and no matter what kind of fuel it took. It was sort of a universal power generator. So it might have had other powers too that they didn't yet know about. So Darth and Joe and Sam and Laura were in their new Jedi Warrior spaceship. Now this is a spaceship that when Laura and Sam graduated from the Jedi training school, all the other Jedi Warriors and some of their Time Lord friends too got together and gave them as a present, as a graduation present, this sleek new 4-person Jedi spaceship. And Darth and Joe were already talking about how they might be able to adapt it so they could also become a Time Lord ship. So it'd be sort of like the TARDIS and be both a spaceship and a time ship. But right now, it was a really cool looking spaceship, and Joe was also thinking about ways that he could improve the thrusting mechanism so it could go faster. And Sam had figured out ways to have it make cheese. So he was actually working on a large cheese production factory in one part of the ship, because that way, if they were on a long journey somewhere, they could have as much cheese as they wanted. And Laura had figured out how to turn the cheese into ice cream in an emergency. She had invented a transformational device so that with the root beer that she brought along, they could all have root beer floats made from root beer and ice cream in case any sort of emergency came up, which required root beer and ice cream floats, which, could happen. So there they were, anyway, out flying in their new spaceship, which they call Dream Machine number 1, just for a name for it. And they were flying in the Dream Machine number 1 when, sure enough, some really, really angry Klingons approached. Klingons, as you know, can be a little bit rude. They tend to attack you for no particular reason, and they smell bad, and they don't wash their hands after they go to the bathroom. So Klingons have a few problems in general. There are some, of course, there are some nice Klingons, but Klingons don't value this. They have somewhat different values. They value stinkiness, for example, whereas humans tend to want to not be stinky. Some humans like being stinky, and some Klingons don't want to be stinky, but those are really the odd Klingons. The Klingons that were coming in these two Klingon ships were extremely stinky. Luckily, they were inside spaceships, so Darth and Joe and Sam and Robin couldn't smell them right at the moment, except that the Klingons had recently invented a new weapon called the smellathon ray, where they could beam their stinky smell into somebody else's spaceship. And Joe noticed that the smellathon ray from one of the ships had locked onto their spaceship and it was about to attack, and so Darth said, "Quick, put up the shields," and Robin flipped on the shields so that it would protect them from the smellathon ray, and it bounced back at them and hit the Klingon ship. But the Klingon enjoyed their own smell, so actually that it didn't hurt them at all. And the Klingon said, "Next time we'll get you. Next time." They had sort of a kind of a lame, evil laugh. It wasn't really just a "You really have to work on that evil laugh," said Robin. "Yes, we are working on the evil laugh. Do you have any suggestions?" And she said, "How about this?" Made her cough a little bit. "Well, that's good," said Sam. "But how about this?" See, Sam and Robin had been studying the evil laughs of bad guys for years while they were training to be Jedi warriors, because they had all these videotapes of all of the evil people that Darth and Joe had fought the years before, and Sam and Robin they were interested in reproducing those evil laughs. They actually had a collection of evil laughs back home, like in a catalog, the taped collection of all the evil laughs of all the bad guys. And so the Klingons were actually kind of jealous. Yes, we want those evil laughs, but we will work on our own evil laughs, and you will hear those evil laughs again, or something like that. And they flipped off the communications and they flew away. So Darth and Joe and Sam and Robin decided that they had actually they left the ice cream producer on too long, and they produced way too much ice cream than they could possibly eat or even store for very long. So they decided to stop at the nearest space station and see if they could sell some of the ice cream for Drupeks. Drupeks are a unit of currency in their system, which can be then traded in for cheese or other kinds of food. But they had way too much ice cream, even for the four of them to eat, and none of it was apple flavored, so they couldn't get Jar Jar to help. So they just decided to go and do that. So they flew over to the space station. Actually, it was a space station, Space Station Alpha, and they were looking around because they heard that she sells seashells by the Space Station Alpha, but they were wrong. Actually, she sold the seashells by the seashore, and the seashore, there had been a small seashore on Space Station Alpha, but they moved it to Space Station Sheen. So Space Station Sheen was the name of the space station where the seashore was now stationed. And at that seashore, she did sell seashells. So they started singing a song about it. She used to sell seashells at Space Station Alpha, but now she sells seashells at Space Station Sheen, because Space Station Sheen is clean, and Space Station Sheen is mean, and Space Station Sheen is the place for buying seashells. Yeah. It wasn't a very good song, so they stopped singing it immediately when they realized, because, if you start singing a song, sing a song of seashells, a bucket's full of space stations, something like that, and it turns out not to be a very good song, then you have to stop. So that's what they did, and they got to the space station, and they were hanging out on inside the space station, and they were selling their ice cream at the space station, when suddenly one of the lizard creatures who hung out at the space station a lot said, if you change the name of ice cream to Crock Ploop, it'll be easier to say out loud. Listen, Crock Poop. I am selling Crock Poop in the space station. Isn't that easier than selling ice cream in a space station? Huh, said Joe. Ice cream in a space station, ice cream in a space station, ice cream in a space station, ice cream in a space station. Croc poop in a space station, croc poop in a space station, croc poop in a space station, croc poop. Yeah, croc poop is a little bit, not croc poop, said the lizard creature, croc ploop. Oh, because croc poop. Yes, croc poop is the poop from crocodiles. You wouldn't want to sell that at a space station unless you were selling it to some sort of scientist who was studying crocodile poop. You're right. With that, I bid you farewell, said Joe, walking away from the very strange lizard creature who he didn't really want to be in a conversation about croc ploop or croc poop with him, so he walked away. Meanwhile, Laura had picked up a thumbtack and was poking holes in the wall around the space station, and that's okay because the space station had thick enough walls so that she wasn't actually letting the air out of the space station. But one of the directors of the space station said, "Excuse me, why are you poking holes with that thumbtack in our space station?" And she said, "Well, isn't that what it's for? Isn't it a thumbtack? And aren't these walls? And aren't you supposed to put holes in walls with thumbtacks?" And he said, "Well, yes, generally speaking, but, well, that's what I'm doing. Thank you. You don't have to pay me. It's just a service I provide." And so she kept poking holes. And with the holes, she was sort of drawing a picture of a giant smiley face out of holes in the wall. And pretty soon, Roboto, who's not a robot, even though his name is Roboto, he says, "Look, I know my name is Roboto. It does not mean I'm a robot, okay?" Roboto came by. Roboto was a Phlagmocthian, which is a kind of creature who has wings coming out of his head. And he came by and he saw the artwork that Laura was doing on the wall, and he said, "Oh mon Dieu, c'est incroyable," which is sort of a fake French accent that sometimes Roboto used. And he said, "That is the most beautiful art I have seen in the last 64 minutes. I want to buy that art." And she said, "Well, I don't know, made it out of a space station. I will buy the entire space station, and you and your friends will be my guests on my castle." And so Roboto paid the owner of the space station 64 quib, which was an enormous amount of money, much more than the space station was worth. So the director of the space station said, "Sure, hey, 64 quib, thanks, bye," and left and took all of his employees with him, all the people working on the space station, and the only people who were left was the lizard creature who liked to hang out at the space station, and Darth and Joe and Sam and Robin, and Robin's incredible artwork, which and they flew the space station with Dream Machine number 1 attached all the way back to Roboto's headquarters, where he had the most gigantic collection of art on this side of the galaxy, their side of the galaxy at the time. And it was really quite amazing. And he what he did was he took apart the space station except for that wall, and he put that up in a very prominent position in his museum. And so there was a space station wall with little pinholes in the shape of a giant smiley face, and that, said Roboto, was actually the best work of art he had seen in the last 7 drusecs, which is a unit of time, which is about 74 minutes long. And he said, "I love it. And now I pay the other guy all that quibs. I want to pay you, Robin. I want to pay you for this beautiful work of art. What can I possibly give you?" And she said, "Well, I've always wanted to go to the spaghetti universe, but my brothers here and cousins, they're not interested in going to the spaghetti universe. They've already been there. They say it's messy, but I would like to go there. I was wondering if you could take us there." "Yes, absolutely. My headquarters, this planet, it is a spaceship, and we will fly to the spaghetti universe, and you shall have all the spaghetti you want. That is my pledge to you, Ms. Robin, the artist of great, immense potential and ability." And so he revved up his spaceship planet, and their Dream Machine planet was attached. The spaceship was attached, and they started flying. Now, the Dream Machine was out of fuel, and that's one of the other reasons they had stopped at the space station. So they really didn't have much choice, Darth and Joe and Sam. They had to go along because they didn't want to leave their spaceship behind. And so they went along with Laura and Roboto and the lizard guy, who was busy eating his toenails, because when his toenails grow too long, he has to eat them. And they flew until they got close to a rainbow hole. And Darth and Joe said, "This spaceship might be too big to go into a rainbow hole. It might not make it." And Roboto said, "Nonsense! I have made my promise, and I know that there are worlds in there such as spaghetti worlds, are there not?" Well, yeah, said Darth. Yeah, said Joe. But, well, we will take the entire planet headquarters, art gallery, machine of mine into the rainbow hole. And he pressed the forward button. They got sucked in. Well, they managed to survive. And they landed down in the rainbow hole, where, as you know, there are many worlds. And the first... Darth said, "Don't open this door." "Why not?" said the lizard creature. And a huge pile of lions roared out. Rah! "That's why." "Yikes," said the lizard creature, because he doesn't like being eaten by lions particularly. Darth and Joe very busily, luckily they were Googs, and they had taught their Goog language to Laura and Sam. So Darth and Joe and Laura and Sam were all quickly speaking to the lions, saying, sorry, but we have some ice cream for you," because they brought the ice cream along. They gave the lions ice cream, and they put them back in the room and shut the door. And the lizard said, "Hey, what's this room do?" And the lizard opened another door, and it was a room full of cauliflower leaves. The lizard loves cauliflower leaves. "I'll see you guys later." All right. And it was, there were other creatures in there he had to contend with, but all he was interested in was the cauliflower leaves. But you should always look before you leap if you're a lizard, and he didn't do that. He just leapt right into the cauliflower leaves. In the meantime, they started looking. Roboto had taken out a spaghetti detector device which detected different kinds of foods, and he could tell a strong scent of spaghetti was coming from straight ahead to the right down the hall. And they went down there and they opened the door, and sure enough, it was the spaghetti planet. And all 5 of them walked in, and they were so happy to be there. At least, Robin was extremely happy because she loves spaghetti. She was eating it, and Sam was looking for cheese to put on the spaghetti, and he found some. And Darth and Joe, they had been here before, but they had to admit it was a pretty nice place, because nobody was trying to eat you or kill you or smash you or stick anything up your nose or into your ears. And so, in fact, Sam decided to stick spaghetti up his nose, which made Robin laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh. And so she started putting spaghetti up her nose, and Roboto thought that was such a great bit of performance art on her part that he started putting spaghetti up his nose. And pretty soon Darth and Joe said, "Oh, well, everybody else is doing it, might as well do it." So they all had spaghetti stuck up their nose, and when they heard this call of help, "Help, help," and they ran outside the spaghetti room, they ran down the hallway, and they saw that the lizard creature was being chased down the hallway by gigantic cauliflower creatures. Now, the lizard creature had been eating the leaves of cauliflowers, which is fine, except then he started nibbling on the leaves of the cauliflower creatures, who were not plants at all. And he didn't know the difference, but they got extremely mad, and they chased him, and several of them that were stuck to the gigantic spaceship art museum headquarters machine of Roboto that they had come in, and the others were chasing the lizard creature. Well, when they saw when the lizard creature saw Darth and Joe and Roboto and Robin and Sam running down the hall with spaghetti sticking out of their noses, he started laughing. And as you might know, cauliflower creatures are afraid of laughter, so they ran away, and they ran back into their world, and there were just some still like barnacles stuck on the side of the machine spaceship headquarters they'd come in. And so Darth and Joe were saying, "Shoo, shoo, shoo," and they started laughing right at them, and it scared them away. And ha 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 ha, and they got back into their spaceship art museum, but they couldn't go anywhere because the cauliflower creatures had sucked out all of the fuel from their machine. And as you know, Darth and Joe and Sam and Robin's spaceship was out of fuel too. And so Darth and Joe and Sam and Robin and Roboto and the lizard creature were stuck in the rainbow universe. Maybe there's a fuel planet in this universe behind one of the doors, said Sam. And Darth and Joe said, "I don't know, what kind of fuel do you take?" And Roboto said, "Well, unfortunately, it's a fairly unique fuel. I call it artesia. It is my whole planet kind of headquarters is fueled. It gets its power from artesia, which is a sort of artistic water that I create on my own planet, and I don't know of any other source for it. I didn't think I'd lose all my fuel on this trip." "Don't you have any fuel in your spaceship?" "No, we're all out." "Aha," said Robin, "we can use the golden apple." "Yes," said Sam, "the golden apple." And Robin and Sam and Darth and Joe each took out their segment of the apple, and they stuck it together. And soon they saw Yoda communicate with Darth and Joe and Sam and Robin through Apple. Apple is not the thing not which Yoda does communicate through, but which is the thing which Yoda uses. But Yoda doesn't want to talk to Darth and Joe and Sam and Robin because Yoda is taking a bath. Goodbye. And so Yoda went away, and they said, well, that's fine, we just need the power. And where's your fuel cells? And Roberto pointed, and they plugged a cable up to the golden apple, which sensed the kind of fuel that was required. And within 1.5 nanoseconds, which is a very, very short period of time, it's less time, of course, than it takes to say 1.5 nanoseconds, or even to say 1 nanosecond, they had a full tank of fuel. And they said, hey, let's fill ours up too, by the way. And they filled up fuel in the Dream Machine 1, Spaceship 2. And they flew off out of the rainbow hole through a white hole. Robin had taken a take-home package of spaghetti with her, so they nibbled on it a little bit on the way home. And Roberto flew his spaceship art museum machine planet back to where it came from, because he had purchased a parking space in that solar system for it. And then Darth and Joe and Sam and Robin bid farewell. But the lizard creature wanted to go with them, since there wasn't much of a space station yet left. There was just the one wall of art, and so he went with them on their spaceship, and they took off. But unfortunately, what they failed to realize was that the lizard creature had tried to do them a favor by plugging the he thought that he didn't really understand the way spaceships worked very well, and he thought that maybe they could use some of the Artesia power in their spaceship, so he plugged a cable between the Artesia power source and the spaceship source, and none of them knew about it. So when they took off, they saw they had engine problems, and the spaceship was about to blow up. And the only thing it could do was to quickly transport into the in-between universe. And so Darth and Joe grabbed Sam and Robin, who didn't yet have rings of transportation, but they were working on making some out of their own wristwatches, and they grabbed the lizard by the hand and they transported into the in-between universe, and were just in time because Dream Machine number 1 blew up. Oh, sorry about that, said the lizard creature. Hey, said Joe, what is your name anyway? The lizard creature. Oh, okay, never mind. And so they were in the in-between universe in the White Room trying to figure out what to do. And Joe said, listen, that was a great present that the Jedi warriors gave Sam and Robin for graduation present, but it gave me some ideas of designing an even better spaceship, one that would have a cloaking device and also could be modified much more easily into a time-flying machine. And so Darth and Joe and Sam and Robin all started working together in the in-between universe on designing a brand new spaceship. And meanwhile, the lizard creature went off to look for some food. So when Darth and Joe and Sam and Robin were done designing their spaceship, which took nearly 3 hours, they started looking around for the lizard creature. It was time to go. Now they couldn't find the lizard creature anywhere, and the thing is that you can't use the galactic computer to locate somebody in the in-between universe. You can only locate somebody with a galactic computer in the regular universe, so they didn't have that option. So they started asking around, has anybody seen a small lizard creature named Lizard Creature, or the Lizard Creature? And some people had heard some things about a lizard creature down the road. They walked. When they got closer to these woods in the in-between universe, which is kind of in the direction of the big pond lake kind of place, they heard these sounds like, help, 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 so they started running, and they saw the lizard creature was on the forehead of Beaverovski. Beaverovski is a large, leafy, green creature, and the lizard creature was trying to nibble on her forehead, and Beaverovski was trying to shake the lizard creature off, and the lizard creature said, hold still, plant, I am not a plant, I am not, and Darth said, get down right away, lizard creature, you are nibbling on the forehead of a very nice person named Beaverovski. And so the lizard creature said, oh, sorry, and he jumped off, and he walked over and said, I could have sworn you were a plant. Well, you know something? You should ask before you start eating somebody, she said. A lot of times looks can be deceiving. And you look at somebody and you think they're one thing, but if you don't ask questions, you might make the wrong choice, and eating me was the wrong choice. Oh, we hope you're not too upset, said Darth. Yes, said Joe, it doesn't look like he did him too much damage. No, I'm fine, said Beaverovski. He has pretty weak teeth, actually, not like mine. And she opened her mouth, and the lizard creature saw that she had gigantic 21-inch thing, knife-like teeth that could have chopped him in half in a single bite. Yikes! Good thing I stopped nibbling on you. Yeah, she said. Well, I don't, unlike you, I don't nibble on other creatures. I happen to have very large teeth, but that is because I use them to dig for minerals in the ground, which I absorb through my tongue funnel for nutrients. And she showed them her tongue funnel. So she was a very strange creature indeed to the lizard creature. So they said goodbye to Beaverovski, and they transported down to the planet, and they went down to the basement, Darth and Sam and Joe and Robin. They started working on their new spaceship, and when their mom called them for dinner, they went upstairs and said, "Hey, where's the lizard creature?" And they looked outside, and there he was, the lizard creature, in the backyard cauliflower patch, eating cauliflower leaves. And luckily, the lizard creature didn't like to eat cauliflower, just the leaves. And so they talked it over with their mom and said, "Please, can he stay with us? He's only nibbling on the leaves." And she said, "Well, okay, he can eat the leaves of the cauliflowers when they're ripe. I'm going to pick the cauliflowers anyway, as long as he doesn't eat the baby leaves, because we want the cauliflowers to be able to grow, and they need their leaves for that." So they talked it over with the lizard creature, and he agreed, and he was just loving living with the Vaders because they had such a large cauliflower patch, which is highly unusual in those days, in those places. So he really had all the cauliflower leaves he needed, and in the winter, when there were no cauliflower leaves available, he hibernated. He took a little stash of cauliflower leaves, and he went into a shoebox in Darth and Joe's bedroom closet, and slept in there, waking up every once in a while to nibble on one of the cauliflower leaves he had brought in from the harvest the year before. So that is the story of how Robin and Sam and Joe and Darth built Dream Machine number 2, got their own friendly lizard creature named Lizard Creature to live with them, who wasn't much use to them in the winter because he was hibernating, and had an adventure involving spaghetti and Roboto, the art collector. The end. My Bonnie lies over the ocean. My Bonnie lies over the sea. My Bonnie lies over the ocean. I'm driving, yet I have to pee. Once upon a time, Lord, when Darth and Joe were just about ready to be Time Lords. So this is before a previous story I told when they already were Time Lords. They were just about ready, and Sam was walking, and Robin, their little sister, wasn't quite walking yet, and the bossy sister was off at college somewhere. Once upon that time, Darth and Joe and Sam and Robin were all out skiing. I mean, even though Robin was a little bit too young to walk at this time, and Sam could just barely walk, all of them could ski because they all had extremely good coordination, which meant that they could ski. And so they were skiing. So it wasn't really their fault what happened. I mean, they were all doing a fine job skiing. It's just that the entire side of the ski slope collapsed, unfortunately, because that caused them to fall quite a long distance underground. You see, the reason that it collapsed was that the people who built the ski slope did not realize that the ground was hollow underneath, and they landed on a ski slope 1.3, not 1.2 or 1.1, but 1.3 miles underground. And the ski, it was sort of a thin, it wasn't snow that they were skiing on now. It was a kind of a layer of salt, a powdery salt, which could act just like snow as far as the skis were concerned. And the skis, which had tiny little computer microchips, were concerned. And they were concerned about what they were skiing on, but they figured it was snow because it acted that way. And so the four of them all four Vaders were down there skiing underground, and Darth was wondering if they were skiing in the pit of death, and the rest of them were wondering that too. And Joe said, "You think this is a pit of death?" And Robin said, "Is that what you're wondering?" And Sam said, "Yeah, they were wondering if it's a pit of death." And Robin said, "Well, you don't have to wonder about that." "Oh, that's good," said Sam. "Ah, that's good," said Darth. "Ah, that's good," said Joe. "Because it is the pit of death," said Robin. "Look." And looked ahead, and sure enough, there was a giant gremlin straight ahead. Now, gremlins aren't usually giant, but this one was the size of a large houseboat. I mean, a boat as big as a large house was as big as this gremlin. It's big and green, very large, very plump, as you might say, sitting on the ground, and they were skiing right into him. So they had to quickly swerve around and stop, but it sprayed salt in the gremlin's face, and when they stopped, that suddenly, and he started rubbing his eyes, saying, "Ah, who threw salt in my eyes?" And Darth and Joe and Robin and Sam were saying, sorry, it's an accident. Accident, I'll show you an accident. And he stood up suddenly and bumped his head on the ceiling and fell down into a pond of ice water, which is incredibly cold, which splashed, and then he got out and he was freezing and shivering. "See, that's an accident. I have accidents all the time. I can't help it. I'm accident prone," said the gremlin. "Oh, you poor thing," said Sam. "We need to dry you off." "I know," said Darth. "Lightsabers." And Darth and Joe took out the lightsabers and started heating up the air around the gremlin by swishing the lightsabers around until the gremlin was dry. "Thanks, guys." "Hey, what are you doing down here? You don't look like monsters," said the gremlin. "Well, we're not monsters," said Robin. "We're skiers, and we seem to have fallen down here into the pit of death." "Oh, that's too bad. That puts a pretty big hole in the pit of death." And they looked up, and 1.3 miles above they could see there was a giant gaping hole in the ceiling. "Yeah," said Darth, "that is a problem because monsters could get out." "That's right. Hey, could I get out?" asked the gremlin. "Oh, I'm afraid you have to stay here," said Joe. "You're a monster." "Yeah, but I always have the ceiling's over here. It's tall enough, and then I slip and fall, and there's green slime everywhere. What's it like out there?" "Oh, it's much nicer," said Robin. It's there's a lot of snow out there." "Snow? What's that?" And they looked around, and there was a little bit of snow stuck to Sam's head. So they gave him some snow, and the gremlin thought, "Wow, this is delicious," as he ate it. Gremlins like snow, thought Darth and Robin and Sam and Joe. So they decided first of all, they couldn't transport because in parts of the pit of death, the transportation doesn't work. So they had to get out. The ceiling was 1.3 miles above. They didn't know how to get out, and they decided to make a deal with the gremlin. "You help us, we help you. If you can get us out, then we'll let you come out too, and then we'll cover up the hole so that no other monsters get out." The gremlin thought that was a great idea. "That's a great idea!" And Darth said, "Now we have to just figure out a way that you can get us out of here. Do you know any ropes?" "No, can't really say I know the ropes." Then Joe said, "Do you know of any large springs?" "No, there's a brook over there, but the spring's all dried up since last summer." And Sam said, "Do you know of any helicopters?" "No, I can't say I do. I know of a teleprompter." "What's a teleprompter?" asked Sam. It's a thing that you look in. It has words. It helps them do newscasts. See, it's like a TV monitor, but it has. Oh, never mind. No, that's not going to help. She asked the gremlin, "Do you have any kind of other flying machines, like a rocket ship?" "Oh, yeah. I don't know if it'll lift all of us, but I do have a rocket ship. Here, hold on. I'll jump up and get it." And they all got on the gremlin's back, and he jumped. And he jumped so high, he jumped over 1.3 miles and landed outside of the pit of death. "Oh, no! I told you I was accident prone. I jumped too high." No, that's great," said Darth, Joe, Robin, and Sam. "You jumped us right out of the pit of death." They got to get some metal sheeting and cover that up, and they fixed it all up. They transported it around. They covered up, and then they went ahead and the gremlin helped them spread snow over so that people could keep skiing, but they reinforced the hill so it wouldn't collapse anymore. And then Darth and Joe and Robin and Sam had an incredibly large gremlin to take home to meet their mom. their lizard friend, lizard creature, was of course hibernating because it was winter, but the gremlin was enjoying eating a lot of the snow along the way, and he went home, and it turned out he loved blueberry pies. And so since they had collected a lot of blueberries the year before, they just decided to make a whole bunch of blueberry pies. And that is how their gremlin friend came to live with Darth and Joe and Robin and Sam and their mom, plus their lizard friend, whose name was the lizard creature. And you might be asking what the gremlin's name is. Well, you'll find that out perhaps on another adventure. And who else lives in that house? Well, the killer robot lives down in the basement, but he's turned off most of the time. And there might be some other robots around, but technically speaking, they're not living there. They're just existing there because they're not actually living creatures. So that's how that happened. The end. Wait a minute! Where did the giant gremlin stay if he was bigger than as big as a houseboat? Couldn't possibly fit in their house. You're right. He could stick his head and arms in through the house that when they opened up the back door so that he could eat the blueberry pie. But in reality, they had to build a special house for him in the backyard, which they did. They built a special gremlin house, and he was happy to stay in there. And they, of course, had to build a special bathroom, too, and hook it up to the sewage system. So they did all that for the gremlin because they thought it might be useful to have a giant gremlin, even if he's a bit accident-prone, around, in case they needed him to scare off any creatures who were scared of giant gremlins. So that is how they solved that problem. The end. My Bonnie lies over the ocean. My Bonnie lies over the sea. My Bonnie lies over the ocean. I think that I'll pee by a tree. Once upon a time, Darth and Joe and Sam and Robin Vader were playing a scavenger game. They were going through the alphabet and each trying to bring back an object that started with the letter of the alphabet they were on. For instance, they started with the letter A, and Darth went out and found an apple, which Jar Jar quickly smelled and ate out of his hand. But Darth said, it still counts, I brought it home before Jar Jar ate it, which was true. And Joe went out and brought back an aperitif. What's an aperitif? Asked Darth. Oh, it's a sort of after-dinner drink. I'll take that, said their mom. That was not for children. And she took away the aperitif. So an apple and aperitif, both of which were taken away quickly upon coming to the house. Sam brought over an aardvark. Hey, let that thing go, said Darth. Yeah, you can't bring home aardvarks. Hey, get that out of my house, their mom said. So he let the aardvark go. And Robin, where's Robin? They heard a rumbling sound. Robin, where are you? And Robin said, I'm bringing something home. She was outside. What are you bringing home? The rumbling noise got louder. This! And they looked out the back window, and they saw, an avalanche! Oh no! And rocks are tumbling down the hill. And Darth and Joe quickly flipped out the windows and started cutting up the rocks with their lightsabers as quickly as they could. And it was hard to keep them, and they had to create some sort of force field, and they couldn't do anything. And Sam pressed a button in the ground, and a giant steel mesh net popped out of the ground and stopped all the rocks from hitting the house. Hey, why'd you do that? Oh, Robin said she was going to bring home an avalanche, and and asked if I wanted to help her catch it, and so I did. So that's what happened with the letter A. And then, what this story is about is the letter B, because they decided to keep playing their game, and Darth said, listen, don't bring home any large objects that can roll over and crush the house. Now, let's go out and do our jobs. And their job was to collect, each one of them to collect something that started with the letter B. Darth looked around. He was looking around outside, and the first thing he found was a banana, and he brought it home. Darth, first an apple, then a banana. He was very food-oriented that day for some reason. Jar Jar wasn't around to eat it, and so he peeled it, and he was just about to eat it when another Gungan came, stuck out his tongue, and ate it. It was Sarah, the Gungan, who also likes to eat apricots, but bananas will work in a pinch, so she ate it. But it counts. He brought home, and he still had a banana peel, but then Sarah ate that too. Okay, and then she walked away. And so Darth had his B object that he brought home, or he did have it for a while, and so Joe was looking around. What object can I bring home that starts with B? Maybe a bee? No, I don't want to grab a bee. It could sting me. And he looked around, And he came back in the house. Hey, what have you got? Oh, a box. That's right, and look in the box. Inside the box, there was a barbecue sandwich. Barbecue in a box! And so he got 2 B's for that. Then they look around, and where's Sam and Robin? They must be out getting their objects. And pretty soon they heard a knock on the door, and there was a boy at the door who came in, and they said, hey, you're not Sam, where's Sam? And he pointed behind him, and Sam was holding a rope that was tied to the boy's bum, a rope tied to, I said boy's bum, it's alliteration. It was really tied to his belt buckle, and in back of the boy. The rope was tied to the belt buckle in back of the boy, and Sam was holding the rope, and he said, I brought home a boy. Well, okay, but you have to let him go, said Joe. So Sam let the boy go. And they looked around, they couldn't see Laura anywhere, and then they saw Sam laughing out the back window, and Joe said, uh-oh, and Darth said, uh-oh, because if Sam's laughing, you know that Robin must have been bringing back something that she shouldn't, and they looked out the back, and she was dragging a bear by the tail. Luckily, it was hibernating, and she dragged it all the way in through the back door, and there was a bear in their living room. You brought home a bear? Asked Darth. Wait till Mom finds out. Good thing the bossy sister was off away at college, or she'd have a real fit. We have to do something about this. Should we tell it to leave? Yeah, get rid of it. And so she went up to the bear and said, and yelled in its ear, you can leave now, oh bear! And the bear woke up. And Darth and Joe and Sam flipped behind the couch to hide. And Laura said, hey, where'd everybody go? And the bear stood up, and the bear was rather large. In fact, his head pretty much almost touched the ceiling. And he looked confused, and he said, which means bear hungry. And so they decided that they had to look around for some food for the bear quickly, or they could really be in trouble, because you don't want to have a hungry bear in your house. So they quickly looked around, and they started bringing food in from the refrigerator. The bear didn't like a lot of their food, but it did like the bread. Bears like bread and beets and butter. The bear was eating bread, beets, and butter, and it was kind of mixing them together in a bowl, and then he was eating them. He had a bowl of bread, beets, and butter. And Darth said, oh, we need some more bananas. He'd like that. You're right. And so they looked around, and sure enough, luckily their mom had bought bananas the other day. So at a bargain, by the way. The bananas were for sale at really basement bottom prices. It was a real bargain for bananas that day. So they brought back the bananas, and they stuck in some beans, because they figured the bear would like beans too. So they had a whole bowl of beef foods, and the bear was getting full and sleepy, and he decided to go to sleep. And they said, no, don't go upstairs. It was too late. He crawled upstairs, and he got into the bed of the bossy sister. And the bear, actually, the bed broke. It was a broken bed. And so the bossy sister bed was broken, and the bear was there, full of beans and bananas and beets and butter and all sorts of other beef foods that he'd eaten out of his bowl after he'd mixed them together, and some even before he'd mixed them together. And the bear was lying there asleep, and they had to figure out how to get the bear out of the house. Well, luckily the boss's sister was away at college, but the mother was coming home any minute. She did not want a bear in the house. Well, she hadn't actually said she didn't want a bear in the house, but they just figured that if she had been asked, she probably would say, no, I don't want a bear in the house. Not only that, but it was a bear. I mean, he wasn't wearing any clothes. So they grabbed the bear by the hair, and they started to pull, but the bear was asleep. It was so close to hibernation time that the bear was very sluggish and sleepy, so they really didn't know what to do. So they decided to dress the bear up in clothes, which they had to quickly sew together to make clothes big enough for the bear, and just pretend that a friend of theirs had come home with a very hairy face and who was tired and wanted to take a nap. So that's what they did. And when the mother came home and she heard snoring upstairs, she said, oh, who's upstairs? And she looked upstairs, and she saw this very, very large guy in the bossy sister's bed, which was broken, and he was asleep. And she said, who's broken the bed upstairs? And they said, oh, that's a friend of ours. He was tired. We said he could sleep up there. Sorry about the bed. We'll fix it. And she said, okay. And the mother ate dinner and then went to bed. Well, needless to say, the kids stayed up all night trying to think of a way of getting the bear out of the house. And Darth and Joe said, well, we could transport the bear out of the house, and they said, no, it's dangerous to transport a bear, because they know that when a bear wakes up disoriented, not knowing where it is, it can be very, very dangerous. That's why they were afraid when the bear woke up in the house, and they quickly got it food. Food, that's it, said Joe. And they decided to leave a trail of food, and they decided to if they could find 24 items of food, they would lead the trail all the way back to the cave where they figured the bear must have come from, because that's the direction from which Robin was dragging it earlier. And so they decided to get a food for every letter of the alphabet so that the bear would be interested in continuing, because otherwise it might be boring just to get a bunch of beets or bananas all the whole way. So first they place an apple by the bear's bed, then a banana a little bit away near the doorway. Then they got some cotton candy, and Sam ate it. So they got some more cotton candy. Unfortunately, Robin ate it. So they got some more cotton candy, and nobody was around to eat it, so they left it on the floor. Some ants started eating it, but they figured there was plenty of cotton candy to go around for the bear, too. Then, that started with C. Then they started looking for some D food. Dirty diapers? No, that's not a very good food. They kept looking around. Dandelion tea. So they quickly made up some dandelion tea, and they put it, because you can do that, and they put it on the ground halfway down the stairs. And they decided, well, it's tea, we better put it all the way down the stairs. So they put a big sign also with an arrow pointing to it that said dandelion tea, good. So the bear would be sure there was something good to eat. And then closer to the front door, actually they decided to go out the back door. So in the middle of the living room, they had to find an E food, so they put an egg. And by the back door, they propped the back door open, and halfway out the back door, they were looking for an F food. They know that some bears eat fish, but they didn't want to have to kill any animals because they were all vegetarian, so they decided to make some